Could this be the one 380 that actually works pretty well? And what we have today is our Federal HST and 380 ACP. I'm going to test that through my Shield EZ, Smith & Wesson Shield EZ 380 ACP pistol. And I want to compare that to the 9mm Federal HST. So an HST 380 ACP versus HST 9mm. And the 380 ACP, it is a 99 grain, is rated at 945 feet per second, which I find interesting because I did test this stuff in the past and I had one of those plastic box versions and it said 1030 feet per second. But looking at a lot of the footage people had with testing that, it seemed like they got overexpansion and not quite enough penetration. So maybe, just maybe, Federal tweaked that load to make it a little bit more, reliable for penetration. Now with our 9mm is a 124 grain, and it's rated at 1150 feet per second. And pistols I'm going to use today are going to be our Ruger Security 9 and 4-inch barrel versus our Smith & Wesson EZ and our it's about 3.7-inch barrel. The reason why is because it's basically scaling down. Our 9mm cartridge is about 2/10 of an inch longer than the 380, as where our 380 is a little bit shorter, but we have about 3/10 inch of it extra barrel travel in our 9mm pistol there. So it kind of equates out to being very fair amount of barrel travel and scaling and all of that. So we'll see what we get when we compare these. So I'm going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy I get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. And with this, I just do a plain shot of clear ballistics to see what our best potential is of these bullets. And after that, I do more of a real world simulation where I put 4 layers of denim on the front. After 3 inches of clear ballistics to represent hitting a pectoral muscle, we hit a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum. And we see how the bullets perform that way. And then I'm going to shoot at my steel silhouette if I can. We have a lot of flooding down here. And see what kind of practical accuracy I can get. So let's get started with this test. All right, first up we have our 9mm and our 4-inch barrel, rated at 1150 feet per second. I'm about 5 yards from the target, 4 yards from the chronograph. Let's see what we get with our 9mm. 1078, 1106, 1119. No read. No read. 1104. I'm going to take those numbers. Our 380 ACP, that is rated at 935 feet per second. Let's see what we get with our Shield EZ here. See how close we get to 935. 963. 955, 984, 963, 944. So for the most part, a little bit above rated velocity, but pretty close to our rated. So let's hit our ballistics gel block and see if that 380 can really stack up to being similar to that 9mm. All right, first up, we're going to do our best potential shot, 9mm, then 380 ACP. So no denim, no MDF. And let's see what we get with our 9mm. All right. Well, let's see what we get here with our 380 ACP. Let's go take a look. All right, so we definitely have more penetration with that 9mm. We're more at an ideal penetration. So what we're looking at here is about 13 inches of penetration with our 9mm. Good damage. Now our 380 ACP, it looks like the damage is about the same and the expansion is about the same. It just didn't have the energy to push us deep while expanding and creating that energy. So what we're looking at here is we're a little bit shallow at about 10 inches of penetration, but I'm not going to call that out because getting a plain shot like this in the real world, this is supposed to represent flesh and everything. It's very rare that somebody's not going to be wearing clothing and you're not going to hit bone if you're aiming center mass. So let's put in our rib simulation and our denim and see how they compare that way. All right, our denim and our MDF. See what we get here with our 9mm. Alright, let's try our 380 now. Alright, same thing, 380 ACP. See how this compares. Let's go take a look. Alright, so that put in some differences there with what we're seeing. Let's pull out this MDF here. And we can see some things here. When we look at the 9mm, it's very clear that even after going through that denim, it was expanding in this first 3 inches, or our pectoral muscle simulation. Then it hit our rib simulation and blew a big hole through it. And we got a penetration of about 17¼ inches. We have expansion. Very ideal overall. Now we're seeing the same thing with our 380 ACP, where the lack of power is kind of limiting what it can do. Now with the damage we're seeing, that would definitely indicate that we have some expansion going on, because I see some typical paddle cutting, but it looks like it's just from one side of this bullet that has some deformation and expansion on it. So what we got here is a penetration of about 11.5 inches. So we're just shy of hitting that minimum of 12 inches that we want to see. Now this is something I talk about here and there. A lot of people will look at this and they'll be like, well, that means the 380 won't work, and that's not what that means. You know, when we look at the old FBI and IWBA, technical specs here, what they want to see, they want to see 12 to 18 inches. In organic gel, clear ballistics is a little different, but it's very similar. But what they're taking into account is if you had to shoot through an arm and then into the thoracic cavity, and that kind of came about with the 1986 Miami shootout, where bullets were a little bit short. So they had that standard of getting at least 12 inches. So what that tells you is, in extreme situations, if you had to make a side shot, that 380 would not penetrate enough. However, when we're looking at about 11.5 inches, that is going to be about close to 6 inches in an actual human body, which would mean straight on shot it would penetrate deep enough without any doubt. So let me shoot at my steel now for some practical accuracy and just kind of see how they do for me. All right, I'm about 12 yards from the target. I just want to see some practical shootability with a couple of rounds here. Maybe I do a little Mozambique drill where I just do 2 to the body, 1 to the head, see if I can actually do that, and see if there's a difference for an average shooter. Now, I would consider myself an average shooter when it comes to semi-automatics, even though I'm pretty good with revolvers. So I just want to see if there's a difference here. So I'm going to do my best to pull up, get a sight picture, pop 2 to the body, 1 to the head, see if I can pull it off. See if it's harder to do with the 9mm than the 380. So 9mm, I'll just go from low ready, sort of. Alright, so it's doable. Now let me see if I can do that with the 380, see how that looks. Just gonna go up from low ready. Alright, here we go. Alright, so I'm not familiar with this pistol as much as I am my Security 9, so it actually took me longer, it felt like. So, that's something to keep in mind. It's not necessarily caliber as much as it is your own pistol. So now that I've done that, I got a few extra rounds. I want to back it up and just kind of shoot at a little bit longer but more practical distances and see how I get with that, with the accuracy with that. All right, I'm at my 50-yard marker. I want to see how it shoots for me at 50 yards. A lot of people talk about that Indiana mall shooting and stopping a threat from that distance, and that's something that I think some people are interested in. Going back to 75 yards is kind of ridiculous, but staying at about 50 is a little bit more practical. So 9mm HSTs. Let me see if I can hit the target from 50 yards. Hold one. So Federal HST does appear to be relatively accurate ammunition, and that's something that you don't always see with a lot of rounds, and that's one benefit there to possibly using standard pressure, and that's what that was. You know, sometimes when you go a little too hot with plus P, sometimes it can throw off the accuracy. So 380 ACP, let's see how this does for me. Safety. I leave that stuff in my videos because it is a reminder to me. You know, a lot of times I don't have a lot of time for training because I'm always filming these videos. So sometimes I like to kind of mix it in. So showing my own failures is really just showing them back to me that I can review in editing and be like, you know what, that's something I should work on if I'm going to carry semi-auto. Checking for that safety, because that goes on and off very easy. So it needs to be more part of my routine to flip down, which it's usually not because I'm carrying a revolver a lot. So keep going. All right, so judging on misses and hits, you know, the accuracy was the same. I missed one with both. I do notice a little bit of just discomfort on my finger with this pistol, and I've noticed that with pretty much every 380 round I've tested. When you get up into defensive rounds where they're a little bit warmer, a little bit of vibration on that trigger. Not a huge deal overall though. But, you know, this didn't feel like I could place shots super accurately at close range because it's relatively new pistol to me. That's where I've had this thing for about 5 years now, and it fits my hand really well. It always feels too big when I carry it, but when I shoot it, it feels right. But with this though, the sight alignment, it felt better in a lot of regard when I'm looking at distance. It just felt like the sight alignment and the balance of the pistol felt a little bit better when trying to take those long shots. So what we're seeing here is pretty typical with 380 ACP versus 9mm. 9mm tends to perform pretty well. A lot of companies put a lot of effort into making their rounds the best, which they should. They just need to work on some of their other calibers and make them a little better than what they do. But, you know, they got a lot of contracts with 9mm, so I understand why they're fighting to have one of the best cartridges out there, and they work really well with the right design. With the poor design, 9mm is one of the worst cartridges out there. With a good design, it's one of the best. It's one of those weird things like that where you get super over penetration with the wrong design. With the right design, does pretty darn good. As where other stuff like 38 Special, you're not as extreme differences between good and bad ammo. That's basically what I'm trying to say there. But 380 ACP, not the best performing round. I'm looking for something that's going to hit that 12-inch minimum and still get expansion, and we did not get that with plain gel, where we didn't hit our minimum penetration. We also did not with our MDF in place either. It got closer, but not quite. So I'm still going to look for a better round for our 380 ACP, because this isn't quite it. Not a bad round. I would carry it. But if I'm gonna have that little bit less performance, I might as well carry something with a little bit less recoil, a little bit less bullet weight, that's probably not gonna expand no matter what, and have that penetration and have a little bit more shootability. This feels like they're adding some power to it to get it going. They're adding some weight to it, but the only thing that's coming from it is more difficulty to the shooter. So that's what you get today with our 9mm versus our 380 ACP and Federal HST ammunition. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.